Good morning. Denise Dryden here from Bainbridge Island, and I wanted to set up on a table today because I have some props I want to use, and I want to play with the concept of how we bind. And binding is an interesting concept, and I'm not much of a New Year's Eve resolutions kind of girl. And we are on the 30th of December, so we have tomorrow's New Year's Eve, and then we go into the first day of 2019. And although I'm not a big fan of resolutions, I am a really good deep cleaner, declutter, and organizer. And it just makes sense to me that as we're closing out 2018, that's what I'm going to do always, is like what worked, what didn't work, what do I need to release, what do I need to get rid of. Not what can I do better, but what's getting in my way, right? Okay, so I wanted to talk about binding and the ways that we bind. And I thought I would start with the definitions, of course, so that we all have a context of what I'm talking about. So to bind, to be bound to, a binding contract, is to tie or wrap securely, like you bind the logs together so that they don't spread out on the river. You hold or restrict by force or obligation. You can also hold with an oath, like a legally binding word contract, marriage vow. To fasten something, to bind the front of the jacket together, to fasten one thing to another. To cohere or cause to cohere a single mass. So like when you're binding and baking, you put eggs in so that they hold all of the ingredients together into one big mass, and then you bake it. And then it's a problematic situation, which is like, man, I'm in a bind, which is when you have a dilemma or a predicament or a quandary, something that's not quite working. We can have binding relationships. We can feel united. We can unite together. We can bind together in our journeys. And the last one I thought, which is sort of like bingo, here we go, is to create emotional attachment. So what happens when we emotionally attach and we bind those emotions to that event? That's what I want to talk about today, those emotions to that event. So to put this into context, I think we all like something nice and safe and permanent. We like the idea of security and permanence, whether it's a good job so we have financial stability, whether it's a home, a place to live, that nurtures, has all of our stuff around us, our books, all of that. A community where we have common and shared experiences, or love, where we have a daily access to connection, to interaction. So we have learned to value these over the years, and we build these. And we build these because we've seen them in our parents, we've seen them in our grandparents. We know what it feels like to have a piece of land that's ours, or a community that we've lived in, or a marriage that is able to withstand. These are all values that we have. And I wanted to throw a little wrench in there, which is in 2018 was the first year that we really started to see some dismantling, energetic dismantling in our world, whether it is in our political, environments where we're examining, hey, what's going on here? We're responding to, this is not the way we've seen things work before, and some of the challenges and changes we've seen in that. We've seen some incredible revealing of truths in our leaders about power abuse, about racism, about hate. We've seen communities rise up and fight against each other. We're seeing what can look like the rise of some incredibly hard things to deal with. Or is it really that we're just finally seeing them, that they're actually presenting themselves for the first time? We've also seen ways in which women are saying, we don't want to be treated this way anymore. This is it. We're never going to go back to the way that it used to be. So we're reevaluating everything. So I want to put binding out there now and show you a little bit about what binding can look like. So I have my scarves, right? So this can be me, and wherever I go, whatever I do, I have a lot of freedom. I can go from Washington to Montana. My job is mobile. My children are secure. I can go visit them whenever I want. I have a life that works for me, right? So this is just an example of an individual. So when I just choose to bind into a piece of property, to purchase something, to settle down, maybe here on Bainbridge Island, to settle into a long-term relationship, to settle into a job where I work 9 to 5. So this could be that other thing, right? This could be that job. This could be that piece of land. So what happens is we take these two, and what I really like is we just bind them. We adhere them together. So that now what we have is red and blue, and wherever they go, they're attached. So everything that happens on this has to be considered with the relationship to this. Now then, if this, let's say this is a relationship, is bound to taking care of aging parents that live in town, then we bind these two together, right? So now the freedoms of the red is still bound to the green, but the green is bound to the orange and could be tied onto a chair, could be anchored somewhere. So what we have is a lot of different restrictions. And then when we have kids, we have to stay in a certain place because they're going to school from September to, and you can start to see how all of these restrictions can kind of limit the freedoms that this person now has. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with any of these. I want to be really clear on that. What it does is we learn that if this is our life and these are the things that really matter to us, right? That we learn to be creative in the ways that we can. We learn that there are sections of us that can go and play, but there's always going to be this anchor here, right? So our creativity is possible. Of course it is. It's flexible as much as we can allow it to be, and it's open to be creative. Mike Dooley does a really good example of this in some of his conversations with the universe, where he says, you can manifest, you can say, this is what I want to create. However, when you say, and it needs to be on Bainbridge Island, sometime between this year and that year, you start to put limitations on all of your manifesting, on all of your flexibility, and so that you give the universe, like this much to work with, as opposed to an entire being, right? Following me here? There's just lots of commitments, lots of attachments that we have. And again, these attachments are normal. They make sense. Now, what I want to do is put the piece which sort of kept nagging me throughout the week on this concept of binding. That there are areas that are bound and they work for us unless they don't. So these areas are only healthy if they're free and they're by choice. So one of the things that happens here is if we bind because of these one of 3 different areas, and I'm going to call them energetic signatures. They're not things. They're energy that gets attached to this, which is, did I bind into this out of rejection? Fear of being rejected. Rejected by loved ones. Rejected by peers. Rejected by the world, like I'm not good enough. So I bound in order to hold or to be afraid of rejection. Another one might be disapproval. Is another energetic signature, which is the fear of having somebody not approve of you, right? They don't love or admire, or they don't like what you're doing, and they let you know it energetically. They scowl. They question you. They act in a certain way, or that you're afraid that this disapproval isn't going to get you what you want. So we have rejection, we have disapproval, and the third one's kind of big. It doesn't really matter. We'll just go right over here. The third one is punishment. Is when we bind because we don't want to be punished. We don't want to be cut off from inheritances. We don't want to lose our job. We don't want to lose our marriage. We also don't want to go to jail. I mean, like, think of how far punishment can go. But these are the fears of being penalized for not going along. And these punishments can be emotional, they can be mental, they can be physical, and they can be spiritual. So when we have some of these binding areas, and as we go through 2018 and we bring it to a close, what I want you to do is examine your life. Play with your life. Who am I? What matters to me? And then notice if there are any areas where there are tensions. And if there are tensions, do they fall into the category of fears? Fears of rejection, disapproval, punishment. If they do, then that's a really good growth area to sort of look at, how do I become more flexible and more fluid and, more aware of what my body's telling me? Because my guess is that when you get up on one of these and you're trying to evaluate it, you can evaluate it from your mind, but your stomach knows, right? Your stomach's going to go, whoa, tightens up. Your shoulders are going to crunch in. Your fists are going to go tight. Your jaw's going to clench. And these are all those somatic issues that let you know that you're up on something that isn't working for you anymore. And it may be that all of this is okay to stay where it is, but if you unbind, then you step into choice and opportunity. And this choice is really spectacular to know once we have this, which is, you can still have all of these beautiful pieces laying out in front of you, and they can matter to you tremendously. And you may keep your significant relationship, but then you free so much more energy, right? Now I have so much more to play with. Then the other part is, what if you really stepped into trust, which is, I will always love this person, or I will always know that this is available, and I now have the freedom to move and to wrap my arms around this and love this and be with it, and to shift and love it from this side, and to still move around, right? Because what we're looking at is how to open up creativity, how to open up fluidity, how to open up responsiveness. And these are all those feminine characteristics that are coming in much more, in bigger sizes in 2019. So when we are able to loosen up some of these ways that we have bound ourselves into emotional contracts, emotional fears, limitations out of significant energy signatures, then we lose choice and we lose opportunity. So I'm inviting you to go expend the next 30th, 31st, examining those and find out, how can you free yourself to become this magnificent being in 2019? Do you want some help with that? Let me know. My name is Denise Dryden. You can find me on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com, and have a fabulous Sunday. Have a fabulous New Year's. Take care.